Hey there. Have you ever felt like the one person who's supposed to love you most just doesn't? Like, no matter what you do, you're never enough for them? For me, that person was my dad. My name's Elise Marwood. I'm 30 years old. And for 20 years, I carried this heavy, aching belief that my father, Edmund, hated me. It shaped everything. How I saw myself. How I moved through the world. But then, one day, a single letter and an old, tattered journal turned my entire life upside down. It showed me that everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. This isn't just a story about pain, though. It's about what it's like to grow up in a family that feels more like a battlefield than a home. It's about the moment I decided I couldn't stay anymore, the years I spent piecing myself back together, and the secret that shattered my world but also set me free. I'm sharing this because I know some of you out there might feel the same. Like your family doesn't. See you doesn't get you. Maybe you felt invisible too. So, stick with me until the end, because the truth I uncovered didn't just change me. It might just give you a spark of hope for your own journey. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the house I grew up in, where every day felt like walking on eggshells. My mom, Dorothy, was the kind of person who could silence a room with a single look. My sister Charlotte was her golden child, always shining, always perfect. And my dad, Edmund. Well, he was barely there, like a shadow who didn't know how to speak. I was the odd one out, the one who never quite fit. But there was something else going on in that house, something nobody told me. A secret so big it would take 20 years to come to light. Want to know what it was? Stay with me because this story is about more than just a family. It's about finding yourself when everything you believed falls apart. So let me ask you, have you ever felt like your family didn't really know you? Like they saw someone else when they looked at you? That's where my story starts, and I promise, it's going to take us somewhere unexpected. So, picture this. A house that looks perfect from the outside. Neat lawn, white curtains, the kind of place you'd think was full of love. But inside? It was a different story. Growing up, I felt like I was always on trial, like I had to prove I deserved to be there. My mom, Dorothy, was the judge and jury. She had this way of looking at you, like she could see every flaw, every mistake you hadn't even made yet. And trust me, she never let me forget mine. "Elise, why can't you be more like Charlotte?" she'd say, her voice sharp enough to cut. "Charlotte's going places. You? You're just you." Those words stuck, you know? They became the voice in my head, telling me I'd never be enough. Charlotte, my older sister, was 4 years ahead of me, and in my mom's eyes, she could do no wrong. She was the star student, the one who always knew the right thing to say, the one who made Mom's face light up. Me? I was the dreamer, the one who'd spend hours sketching in my room, hoping one day my paintings might mean something. But to Mom, my art was a waste of time. "You'll never make a living with those scribbles," she'd snap, tossing my sketches aside like they were trash. I remember one time when I was 12, I spent weeks on a painting for a school art contest. I was so proud of it, thought maybe Mom would finally see me. But when I showed her, she laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Elise, don't embarrass yourself. Stick to something you're good at." I didn't paint for months after that. Charlotte wasn't much better. She had this knack for making me feel small, like I was always in her shadow. I'll never forget the summer I was 16. I'd worked so hard on a painting for a local art show, poured my heart into it. I left it on the kitchen table to dry, and when I came back, it was ruined, torn to pieces. Charlotte was standing there, smirking. "Oops," she said. "I thought it was scrap paper." She didn't even pretend to be sorry. And when I ran to Mom, crying, she just shrugged and said, You shouldn't leave your things lying around, Elise. That moment broke something in me. It wasn't just the painting, it was the realization that I'd never win. Not with them. Then there was my dad, Edmund. He was quiet, like he'd checked out of our family long before I was born. He'd sit in his armchair, reading the newspaper, barely looking up when Mom tore into me. I used to think he hated me, like I'd done something to make him ashamed. When I was 15, I painted a picture of our house, hoping maybe it'd make him notice me. I left it on his desk, my heart pounding with hope. He never said a word about it. Just handed it back the next day, like it was nothing. That silence hurt more than Mom's words or Charlotte's cruelty. It made me feel invisible. Living in that house, I started to believe I was the problem. Why else would my own family treat me like this? I stopped trusting myself, stopped believing I could ever be more than what they saw, a failure, a disappointment. Every day felt like a battle to prove I was worth something, but no matter how hard I tried, I always fell short. I'd lie awake, at night, wondering what I'd done wrong, why I wasn't enough. And the worst part? I didn't even know the half of it. There was a secret in our family, something so big it would change everything I thought I knew about myself. But I wouldn't find out for years. Not until I was ready to walk away. Let me ask you this. Has someone in your family ever made you feel like you didn't belong? Like no matter what you did, you'd never measure up? That's what I carried with me every single day. It wasn't just the words or the actions. It was the way they made me doubt myself, made me think I'd never be enough. But here's the thing. I didn't know then that I wasn't the one who was broken. That truth was waiting for me, and it would take a letter from my dad to finally set it free. You ever have one of those moments where something just snaps inside you? Not in a loud, dramatic way, but quietly, like a thread you didn't even know was fraying, finally breaks. For me, that moment came when I was 25. I'd spent years trying to be what my family wanted, less dreamy, less Elise, more like Charlotte, more like someone my mom, Dorothy, could be proud of. But no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough. And then, one night, it all came crashing down. It was Charlotte's big graduation party. She'd just finished her master's degree, and Mom threw this huge celebration, inviting half the town. The house was decked out, flowers, lights, the works. I wanted to be part of it, to show I could belong. So, I spent weeks painting, a portrait of Charlotte, capturing her smile, the way she always seemed to glow. It was one of my best pieces, and I thought maybe this time Mom would see me. Maybe Charlotte would too. I wrapped it carefully and brought it to the party, my heart in my throat. When I gave it to Charlotte, she barely glanced at it. "Oh, another one of your little drawings," she said, tossing it onto a table like it was nothing. But it was Mom's reaction that broke me. She looked at the painting, then at me, and said, "Elise, don't embarrass Charlotte with this. This nonsense. She's accomplished something real tonight." Her words hit like a slap. Nonsense. That's what my heart, my work, my love was to her. I stood there, frozen, as the party buzzed around me, feeling like I was disappearing. Charlotte smirked, Mom turned away, and Dad, Edmund, just sat in his corner, sipping his drink, silent as always. That night I went to my room and cried until I couldn't anymore. But something else happened too. I realized I couldn't keep doing this, couldn't keep begging for their love, couldn't keep shrinking myself to fit their idea of who I should be. I was tired, so tired of feeling like I was nothing. So, I did something I never thought I could. I sat at my desk, took out a piece of paper, and wrote a letter to Mom. It wasn't angry or dramatic, just honest. I told her I needed to leave, that I couldn't stay in a place where I felt so small. I said I loved her, loved Charlotte, loved Dad, but I had to love myself too. I sealed it, left it on her dresser, and packed a bag. The next morning, I moved to a small apartment in a new city hours away. I didn't tell anyone I was going. I just left. It felt like betraying them, like I was the worst daughter, the worst sister. But deep down, there was this tiny flicker of relief, like I'd finally taken a breath after years of holding it in. I didn't know what was next, didn't know if I'd ever paint again, didn't even know who I was without my family's shadow over me. But I knew I couldn't go back. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you love to save yourself? It's the hardest thing, isn't it? For me, that letter was the first step toward something new, something I didn't even understand yet. And what I didn't know was that years later, another letter, this one from my dad, would unravel everything I thought I knew. Leaving my family felt like jumping off a cliff without knowing if I'd land. I was 25, alone in a new city, with a tiny apartment, a few paintbrushes, and a heart full of questions. Who was I without Mom's criticism, Charlotte's cruelty, or Dad's silence? I didn't know, but I was determined to find out. Those first months were rough. I'd wake up some nights, my chest tight, wondering if I'd made a huge mistake. I missed them, missed Mom's rare smiles, Charlotte's laugh when she wasn't being mean, even Dad's quiet presence. But I also felt something new. Space. Space to breathe, to figure out who Elise Marwood really was. I started small. I got a job at a coffee shop, saved up for a cheap easel, and began painting again. At first, it was hard. Every stroke felt like Mom's voice in my head, saying, "You're wasting your time." But then I met Dr. Patel, a therapist who changed everything. I found her through a community center, and honestly, I was skeptical. I thought therapy was for broken people, and I wasn't ready to admit I might be one of them. But Mia was different. She had this way of listening, really listening, like she could see the parts of me I'd hidden for years. "Elise," she said in one of our first sessions, "you're not the problem. You never were. The problem was the way they made you feel about yourself." Those words hit me like a wave. For the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as worthless as I'd been told. With Mia's help, I started to unravel the knots inside me. I wrote letters I never sent, letters to Mom, pouring out my hurt, to Charlotte, asking why she needed to tear me down, to Dad, begging to know why he never spoke up. I didn't expect answers, but putting those words on paper felt like letting go of a weight I'd carried forever. I painted too, not to prove anything, but to feel. My canvases became my safe place, full of colors and shapes that told my story. A year after I left, I entered one of my paintings in a local gallery show. When it sold, I cried, not because of the money, but because someone saw value in something I'd created. For the first time, I felt like I was enough. But healing isn't a straight line. There were days I'd spiral, wondering if I'd been too harsh, if I should call Mom or Charlotte, if I'd imagined the pain. I'd dream about Dad, his face blank, and wake up aching for a connection I never had. Mia kept me grounded. "You're allowed to miss them," she'd say, "but you don't have to go back to a place that hurts you." She was right. Slowly, I built a life I loved, a small circle of friends, a studio apartment filled with my art, a sense of peace I'd never known. I thought I was finally free. But then, 5 years after I left, a letter arrived that turned my world upside down. It was from my dad, Edmund. I hadn't heard from him since I moved away, hadn't expected to. The envelope was heavy, and inside was a letter and an old, leather-bound journal. His handwriting was shaky, like he'd written it in a hurry. "Elise," it said, "I need to see you. There's something I should have told you years ago." My stomach churned. Part of me wanted to throw it away, but another part, the part that still hoped for something from him, couldn't let it go. So, I agreed to meet him at a quiet coffee shop in my city. When I saw him, I barely recognized him. Edmund looked older, his hair gray, his eyes heavy with something I couldn't name. We sat down, and he didn't waste time. "Elise," he said, his voice low. "Dorothy, your mom. She's not your real mom." I froze. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. He kept talking, his words tumbling out. "Your real mother was Clara, a woman I loved before I married Dorothy. Dorothy couldn't have kids, so she adopted you to keep me from leaving. You were Clara's daughter, but I raised you as mine." My head was spinning. Clara? Adopted? I couldn't process it, but he wasn't done. He slid the journal across the table, his hands trembling. "There's more," he said. "Charlotte knew. She's known since she was 16. She told me you didn't want to see me, that you hated me. She made me believe you wanted nothing to do with me, Elise. She did it so Dorothy would keep favoring her, so you'd stay the outcast." I felt like I'd been punched. Charlotte didn't just know about Clara. She'd lied, deliberately, to keep me and Dad apart. All those years I thought he hated me, thought I was nothing to him, were because of her. And then there was the journal. It was Clara's, my real mom's. Her words were like a lifeline. "I never wanted to leave you, Elise," she wrote. "Dorothy made me believe I had no choice. Clara hadn't abandoned me. Dorothy had forced her out. I sat there, my hands shaking, tears burning my eyes. Everything I'd believed about my family, about myself, was a lie. Charlotte hadn't just torn up my paintings. She'd torn apart my chance at a father's love. Dorothy hadn't just controlled me, she'd stolen my truth. And Dad, who I thought didn't care, had been lied to just like me. I didn't know who I was anymore. But in that moment, something else stirred inside me. A spark, a need to keep going, to find myself beyond their lies. Let me ask you, what would you do if you learned someone you loved had lied to keep you from your family? For me, that coffee shop was where my old life ended, but it was also where I started to see a new one. That moment in the coffee shop, hearing my dad's words, "Dorothy isn't your real mom," felt like the ground falling out from under me. Charlotte's lies, Clara's journal, the truth about my adoption, it was too much. I walked out of there feeling like I didn't know who I was anymore. Was I Elise Marwood, the girl who grew up invisible? Or was I Clara's daughter, someone who'd been loved and lost? For days, I couldn't paint, couldn't sleep. I just sat with that journal, reading my real mom's words over and over. "I never wanted to leave you," she wrote. Those words were like a lifeline, but they also hurt, because I'd spent my whole life believing I wasn't wanted. I went back to Dr. Mia Patel, my therapist, and poured it all out. I told her about Dorothy, who'd built a family on a lie to keep Dad. About Charlotte, who'd stolen my chance at a relationship with him just to stay Mom's favorite. About Dad, Edmund, who'd been lied to just like me. I was angry, heartbroken, but mostly, I was lost. Mia listened, like she always did, and then she said something I'll never forget. "Elise, this truth doesn't define you. It's a piece of your story, but you get to write the rest." That stuck with me. I realized I didn't have to carry their lies anymore. I could choose what came next. So I made a choice. I forgave them. Not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to be free. I forgave Dorothy for hiding the truth, for making me feel small to protect her own fears. I forgave Charlotte for her cruelty, for choosing herself over me. I even forgave Dad for his silence, because he'd been trapped in his own way. But forgiving didn't mean going back. I decided I wouldn't see them again. Not because I hated them, but because I loved myself too much to step back into that pain. Instead, I turned to what mattered. Building a life that felt like mine. I started painting again, but this time, it was different. I painted a portrait of Clara, my real mom, based on the words in her journal. I imagined her eyes, kind and warm, and it felt like I was meeting her for the first time. That painting became the centerpiece of my next gallery show, and when people asked who she was, I'd just smile and say, "Someone who loved me." I kept working with Mia, too, learning to trust myself, to believe I was enough. I found a new family, not by blood, but by choice. Friends who celebrated my art, who saw me for me. My apartment became a home, filled with color and light, a far cry from the house I'd left behind. Looking back, I'm not the girl who wrote that letter to Dorothy 5 years ago, scared and broken. I'm stronger now, not because the pain's gone, but because I've learned to carry it differently. Clara's journal taught me I was loved, even if I didn't know it then. Dad's letter taught me he cared, even if he couldn't show it. And my own journey taught me that I don't need anyone's approval to be whole. I'm still healing, still painting, still figuring it out, but I'm doing it on my terms. I want to ask you something. What's a secret that's changed your life? Maybe it broke your heart, maybe it set you free. Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because I've got more to share. Next time, I'll tell you about the day I faced Charlotte after learning the truth. Want to know what she said? Stick around. No matter where you are right now, I want you to hear this. You are enough, just as you are. Your past doesn't own you. You do.